Hello everyone, this is Stephen Lund and welcome back to another Blender tutorial. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter one today, but I will be covering how to create realistic animated trees in Blender. So I'm using the sapling add-on and exploring a few settings that I don't see used very often in newer renders and young artist renders that maybe they're not aware of, and I'd like to expand on and show you guys the possibilities. So without further ado, why don't we jump right in. I'm going to first enable this add-on by going user preferences and typing in sapling, and you'll see it's right there. Now there is a little bit of a error bug with this right now at this current version of Blender. I'm using 1.2.7. and they say length parameters may cause errors, and I've experienced this, so we cannot adjust the length parameters, but that is okay, and it's possible this will be fixed if you're doing this too. So we'll delete our default cube and Shift A, add a curve, and now we can add a tree. So you can see right now we just get this like wireframe tree, and we'll expand our settings over here. This is where they show up down in the bottom corner here. So we'll expand these up and select bevel, and then we get our beveled tree. So it's basically a curve, and we just turned it to be a beveled curve. Now you can see that this is very low res here. It's like a box. Changing this bevel resolution will subdivide that basically. So going to like a 2 will be good for not going too crazy in the resolution, but getting a smoother look. And let's change the radius of our tree up a little bit. Let's make it like a 1.5 so we get a thicker base. I think that looks better. And let's change the scale down to like a 10, so it's only about like that. Alright, so for the moment that's all we need to do here. You can use some presets here and you can change the shape, but I find like flame or Ted flame like I had is going to be the best looking, so I'm going to leave it at that. And that's pretty much all you need to know for here. You can change the curve resolution here, but that's pretty good. So let's move on to our next tab here now and go to branch splitting. Now here we can choose the number of levels on our tree. So basically the number of branches off of branches. So you can see right now we have 2, and that's because we have this one main curve and then all these individual branches coming off of it. So if we go to 3, you can see that now we get branches off of that one as well, and that's a crazy amount of branches. Pretty cool. But this is pretty good, and right here you have these 4 different boxes. The first one is the number of branches on the main stick. The second one is the next row of branches. Third one is the next row. Basically in levels, this is what you have here, 1 through 4. So if we change the amount of 50 branches here down to say 40, you'll see we get less branches on our main stick here curve. So I'm going to go down to about 40, maybe 45. I apologize if you hear squawking in the background. That's our guinea hens. They're very loud. So that's pretty good for this though, and this is all pretty good right now. I'm going to change the base size here down to be about a 0.18. So you can see your branches come all the way down to here now, and that's good. So I'm going to switch now to the branch growth. And now here we can change the length of our individual branches. And because I want this to be more of a traditional tree and not more of like a pine tree or whatever, I'm going to make the length be more of like a 0.5. So you can see now that it shoots out much further, more like a maple tree or something like that. So that is pretty good looking now. And I might make these branches just a little bit shorter. Alright. So that's looking pretty decent. Now we can change a few things, like right here is the length variation that you don't want to mess with right now if you're running this version of Blender, because there's a problem with that right now and you'll get an error. So I'm not going to touch this, but a few things I can change is the curve resolution right here. I find this is a little bit low, so I like to increase this up a little bit to get a little bit better curve resolution basically. And the curvature you can also play with to get, you can see if I adjust this right now, going up and down, I get the branches coming down more and going up more. And this would be good if you were adjusting it for like the amount of snow or something you have on your branches, but I'm thinking I'm going to go at like a -30 for this setting. and looks pretty good. Alright, now the taper here. This is another setting that I found I can adjust to get some better realism. And basically right now when it's at 1, it's tapering the curve from 1 all the way down to nothing, so it's a complete point. And I'm going to adjust this by going more of like a 0.9, and this adjusts the main curve obviously. So if I go like 0.8, you can see it happening. This curve is getting fatter at the tip, which is good. So I'm going to go like 0.9 on these then. So nothing ever comes to a complete point. Maybe I'll even go 0.8, because I find that's pretty unrealistic if you have your branches coming to a complete point, because obviously no branches really do that. They're always going to be a little bit of thickness. So I think this gives it a little bit more realism. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Now, like I said, you can adjust the curvature of your branches a little bit to whatever you are happy with there. But I think we're pretty good here. You can also do like the back curvature, and this is basically like adjusting the end half of it. Like this would really work well for snow if you wanted the branches to be like sagging or something. So that is something cool to keep in mind. And I might adjust just the main tree curvature a little bit, just to give a little variation like that. Maybe just a small amount, just to make it look a little bit cool. So yeah, this is looking pretty good. Now back in our branch splitting, there's still a few things that I didn't show that I want to show, and that is these segment splits. This is really cool for basically splitting your branches into multiple branches. So you can see right now, like this rod here is all one branch. If I turn off the levels down to 1, you can see one long branch here, okay? So now if I take the segment splits and make this like a 1, you can see it gets crazy with all kinds of individual branching off, boom, 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 boom. And this really gives you some more realism. Obviously not like this, but if I went just like a 0.3, you can see we have our branches going off, splitting, and this is way more realistic than previous. So I think I'll do a 0.3 on my next level too and turn that back on, and you can see this gives us a much cooler, more realistic result. Maybe needs a little bit of adjusting still. You can change like the down angle here and just kind of pull them up a little bit, and that looks pretty good actually. I'm pretty happy with that. And you can also change the branch radius ratio. This is basically the ratio between levels of how much smaller the branches get every level, and I like to make this a little bit higher sometimes to make the branches a little bit more narrow. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. You can always change these to whatever you want, obviously. I'm just showing you what I've done. Alright, change that back a little bit, and that looks a little bit better. And you can give yourself more resolution also if you want. But just keep in mind this will slow down your viewport sometimes depending on your system. Alright, so I think we're done with these 3 settings now. Now I'm going to move on to the armature, and this is how we animate the tree. So this is something I don't see used very often, but it's very powerful with this sapling add-on, and I've been experimenting with it for the last few weeks now and really enjoying it. So basically I'm just going to select use armature, and this will make a whole rig basically with a bone everywhere you have a curve. So you can see we have bones. If I go into wireframe, you might see it better, going along every single branch on our tree. So that is pretty crazy, pretty awesome. And now if we choose armature animation, wait for that to go. Alright, there we go. You can see if we scrub through our timeline, that whole rig is animated with wind. This is so cool. I mean, this is crazy. You can really get realistic results, and this is something I use in a handful of my Blender renders and stuff. And right now the wind speed is a little bit crazy high, so I'm just going to go down to about a 0.4 on the wind speed. This is basically the amount of wind. And wind gust, I think this is kind of like the variation of how much it will increase and decrease over the amount of time. And I'm just going to go about a 0.3 with that. And then the frame rate you shouldn't have to change unless you want to change the speed of your animation. Leaving it at 1 is default. So now you can see we got just this little bit of movement, which is pretty realistic looking. And if I go to a 0.3, that will be just a little bit less obvious, a little more subtle. So that is pretty cool. I'm gonna not gonna. I was gonna say save, but you can't do any adjustments now until you're done with the sapling add-on. So I'm gonna finish up by adding leaves to my tree. Alright, so you just go to your leaves tab, and I'm going to change my leaf shape to be rectangle because I'm going to be using a texture on these leaves, and square is all I need. So now if I go show leaves, you'll see, just wait for it a second, and you'll see, bada boom, wait for the bouncing ball. Pew, 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 pew. There we go. We have our leaves distributed all over our tree, and that is super, super cool. I'm going to change the leaf scale here up a little bit to give it a larger leaf, because once I apply my texture, it'll look smaller, and I don't want such small leaves right now. So I'm going to go to about a 0.3, and you can see it getting a little bit slow now, but that's okay. Alright, so that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that now. You might want to turn the amount of leaves down if you're worried about render times. Obviously, you can keep everything lower poly if you want, and actually at the end of this video, I might show you a quick way to create a more low poly tree for those that don't have the speed of our computer to hold up with it. But this is pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with this now. So we don't have to worry about these settings anymore, and we can move on. So I'm going to grab my camera and just go Alt-Control-0 to snap it to my view, and zoom out a little bit so I can see the whole tree in view. Pull down a little bit, rotate up a little bit along the X. Okay, let's try that again. Rotate along the X. There. Alright. Now, I'm going to show you how to materialize and render this tree. Materialize. Add materials to this tree. So we don't need this lamp. But with the mesh selected, this is still a curve, okay? So basically, we can adjust the curve, you know, however we want, scaling up the base or whatever, blah, 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 blah. But you can't really texture it like you would in mesh, because curves aren't really meant to be textured. So this is an issue that I ran into that I kind of struggled with, but I found something that works pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my curve settings here, and under texture space, I'm going to select use UV values for maps. That texture there, use UV for mapping. And this will give us a better generated texture on these curves, I've found. So one other thing you want to do when you have your mesh selected is you need to choose, you'll see that this mesh now has a modifier on it. After applying the armature, you now get this modifier on your curve, which you can now choose bone envelopes, and this would basically snap the curve to your armature so it animates with the armature. If I jump ahead now, you should see, with a little bit of lag maybe, just because I did a little high poly, that the tree moves with it. Perfect. Alright, I'm going to quick save this tutorial file. I'll just stick it on my desktop right now because that's where I put everything. There we go. Perfect. Save. Alright, so let's put the bark texture first on our tree. So I'm going to turn off the toolbar here and split my window. Grab the node editor. We'll be doing this in cycles, so change from Blender Render to cycles if you haven't yet. And yeah, go new material. Wait for it. Boom, 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 boom. Alright, we got our material. I don't know why that took a while, but that's okay. So I'm just going to well, first, we need to grab our textures. Getting ahead of myself. I need to grab my textures off cgtextures.com, and I'll show you guys the textures I use. So I'm on CG Textures here, and I'm just going to type in bark, and this is where I get most of my textures from. It's a great website for finding textures, and I'm just going to grab this one. So I'll just download this like so, and for leaf, I'm just going to type in leaf. We'll need this for our tree, obviously, and I'm going to go nature/leaves up in the category here. There we go. And I've looked through these already a little bit, and there's a number of the ones that you could use here, but the one I decided I was going to use is on page 2. I'm going to go for this one, and then I'm going to choose this one here, because the stem is going to about the right point on the bottom here to mesh up with our branches. So something to keep in mind, but I'm going to take that one as well, and that is downloading. That's good. So I'm going to now, whoops, okay, my textures are done. I'm going to shift add a texture, image texture, and open up the ones I just downloaded. So it's right here, bark. And I'm going to connect that up. And I don't have to worry about saying anything to the UV maps because it's going to automatically use the generated UV thing because I set that up here. So basically I might want to adjust the amount of time this mapped across it, but if let me quick put a lamp in here. Just going to quick throw in a lamp sun, shift A, add a lamp, and just kind of rotate it at this angle by jumping around my viewport and putting her up there like so, making it a little bit brighter and giving it a quick orange just so it looks more like the sun. Alright, so now if I switch to rendered view, you should be able to tell. You should turn my GPU on so this goes faster. Let me quick switch to GPU. There we go. You can see we have our bark texture now on our base of our tree. So if I zoom in here, you can see, hold up, pull you up here. If I zoom in here, whoop, too close. You can see we have our bark texture. And it's not mapped perfectly, but it's definitely not too bad for being all generated. So that is pretty good, and I'm pretty good, happy with that. If you want to add a little bit more realism to it, you could shift A, add a vector bump node, I should say. Just connect the color to the height and then the normal to the normal in your diffuse texture. And you should see it give it some nice bump mapping there. It's a little strong right now, so I'm just going to turn the strength down to about a 0.5. Good. Now I'm going to switch out of rendered view because this is kind of slowing me down a little bit. And let's add our tree leaf texture. So basically, when you generate the leaves with the sapling generator, sapling add-on, it will automatically UV unwrap all your leaves into a square projection on a flat plane. Basically, if I show you here, if we go to my UV image editor and tab into edit mode, you can see they're all projected as squares, which is perfect because I'm going to open up now that leaf texture that I downloaded. And you can't see it right now because everything's selected, but I have my leaf here, and they'll be all mapped perfectly onto that because of this lovely add-on. So now if I go to my node editor and create a new material for the leaves, I'm going to use the diffuse, but I'm going to be adding a handful more between here. So the leaf texture is going to be a little bit more complicated than the bark, but it's going to look really, really sweet when we're done with it. So that's why we do it. So I'm going to add an image texture and select the leaf texture that I just opened up in Blender and use that as the color. Now I'm going to shift add a shader, mix shader, and I'm going to put that in there twice, and between the two of them here I have a mix shader and a mix shader. I'm going to add another shader, and this is going to be an add shader. Now I'll show you guys what we're going to use these for right now. So basically this one is going to be our glossy, this one's going to be our translucent, and this one's going to be our transparent. Alright, so don't worry if you don't understand that because you don't really have to. I'm going to add a glossy shader now and just plug this into the bottom. So now this value will depend on how much glossiness we have down here. And I'm just going to set this to like a 0.1 for now. Now I'm going to add our translucent shader, and this is going to be added in the bottom here with this shader, and I'm going to add a transparent shader, and this will be put right on top. Alright, perfect. Now the factor for the transparent is going to be the alpha of this texture. So I'm just going to take that and stick it into the factor value there. And the color for the translucent node needs to be the same as the color of our texture too. Perfect. Now I'm going to add a little bit of, whoopsies, sorry about that. I'm going to add a little bit of a bump to this now. So add a bump texture, take the color, put it into height, and then you can connect the normal with the normal of your diffuse, the normal of your glossy, and the normal of your translucent. Now I'm just going to turn the amount of this way down because I don't want too much. Alright, so now we should have a pretty decent looking shader. We might need to tweak it a little bit, but this should look pretty realistic for nature leaves. So I'm just going to zoom in here so we have closer view, quick save my project, and go rendered. Let's see what we got here. Just wait for this a little bit, and here we go. So a little bit slow, but there we go. You can see our leaves now are textured across our whole tree, and this looks pretty decent. I'm pretty happy with this. You might want to turn the roughness of the glossy shader up a little bit larger, so maybe like a 0.28 or something, so you don't have too much white, and then maybe turn the whole amount of glossy down, because this is giving us a little bit too much white, I think, right now. So just maybe like a 0.06, but pretty realistic looking. You see your bump map working on there and stuff. So I'm just going to jump to my camera view, and there you have it, our realistic looking tree. And that looks pretty good, guys. It's pretty realistic looking. And if I go, hold up, let me just jump back to being solid viewport. There we go. It's a little bit too shiny still, so I'm going to go a little bit higher in the roughness and a little bit lower in the mix, but that should be good. Now if you're unhappy with the color of the leaves, you can always adjust that a little bit by going, throwing in like a RGB curves here, putting the color in there, and then using this as a color for your diffuse and your translucent. So now let me just jump to rendered so we can see what it changes when I'm rendering this now. There we go. You can see this might be a little bit too orange of a leaf or whatever for your liking, so if you want to add more green to it, you would switch to your green in your RGB curves, and you can just pull this bar, basically, this curve up, and boom, get a whole lot more green going on in there. So there you go, guys. That's it for the tree tutorial, realistic tree tutorial. This is animated too, if you remember, so it will wave back and forth in the wind. And here's a little animation now that I did by taking a tree and sticking it in my grass tutorial result. So you can see it looks like this when you combine it with a full looking scene, and I also put some falling leaves off of it with a particle system. But you can see the cool results you can get with this animated tree. So really, really cool. Now that is it for that, but I want to quick show you guys now. Let me just jump over to a different layer. I want to quick show you how to do this low poly. So say you're using it for a scene and you can't render a whole bunch of these trees because they're too high poly and they take way too long. Well, I'm just going to put my cursor in the center by Shift S and Shift A, add in another curve and tree. So this one now I'm going to do low poly, and I can show you how you can get realistic results by doing this. So I'll just hit T to bring up my toolbar, and I'm just going to go bevel. I'm just going to go 1 bevel resolution this time, and I'm going to turn my curve resolution down a little bit over here. Good. So you can see it's already a little bit lower poly, but that is okay. So change the base up a little bit more like I did before, and change the scale maybe down a little bit. Alright, branch splitting, we go just one more level, and we change the amount of branches down to about 30, and this amount down to about 25. And then let's change the base size down to about a 1.6 or something. So they go all the way down, and you know, you can change the angles and such. I'm not going to bother with this too much now. Give it some segment splits like I did before, so you can get the branch splitting going on in there, which is really cool looking. And U2, 0.6. Perfect. Now back in my branch growth, I'm going to go and make them longer like I did before, and make these a little bit shorter like I did before too. That looks pretty good. Maybe pull them up a little bit with the down angle here. But that's pretty good looking. Just a basic quick tree, and the resolution is not too high. So in the branch growth, I'm going to quick turn the resolution down here a little bit, just because you don't want too much resolution on these low poly trees, and here even more. That might be a little bit too much. Might have to go back to 3 in this one. And do the same taper thing that I did before. Perfect. Alright, so now you can add your armature like we did before as well. Just a quick armature and armature animation. And you can see that this is already adding in faster than it did before because it is lower poly and there's less bones basically that it has to place everywhere. So I'm going to add the leaves, but this time I'm going to put much less leaves. So I just click show leaves. That's going to take a little bit, but I'm going to put it way down to about 10 leaves per branch. Basically this is leaves per branch, or maybe even 8. So not nearly as many leaves, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the leaf scale up to about a 1. So huge leaves. So you might be thinking, whoa, what are you going to do with these huge, ginormous leaves? And maybe even a little bit bigger. You can experiment with this however you like, and turn the amount of leaves down even more to like 5. Okay. Alright, so that might be a little bit too big. I might be a little crazy, but we'll just do that, about 1.1. Okay. And let's quick do the same UV mapping thing we did for this. And now for the branches, okay, I'm going to quick give my bark here the same texture that I have for my bark over here. And now for the branches, I'm going to give it the same texture, but I'm going to check this checkbox here to make it its own material, so I'm not copying the other one anymore. And what I'm going to do is jump to my node editor over here, close those windows off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quick go back to CG textures, and this time when I search leaf, I'm going to go nature/branches. Okay, and you see that we have all these cool branches, and I'm just going to grab this one here, which is a whole branch of leaves. And now you guys probably know what I'm doing, and I'm going to be using basically a branch instead of individual leaves. I'm going to use a whole branch, and this will look good for it'll look good for basically let me grab my branch here, right here. Okay, this will look good for basically medium shots and far away shots, but for a close-up shot you'd probably be able to tell that it's a pretty flat branch. So this is why I'm saying it's a low poly, and it won't have the same amount of quality as the other one, but it will render a lot faster. So if I switch to rendered now, you can see we have our tree. And let me quick move back to my other high poly tree. I'm gonna quick move my sunlight over so I have that in my render. There we go, and rendered. So there you go, guys. This is still a really nice looking tree, and it's just a little bit more fakey looking if you see the flat branches, but it would easily work for a distant shot if you needed something that would render fast. So that is how you do that, and this is animated as well. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this leaf tutorial, tree tutorial, or animated tree tutorial, and maybe you can learn something. If you did, leave a like, and thanks for watching. Check out some of my other videos, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.